I can talk into it just like this. Hi, this is working? Yes, it is working. I have a box in my face. Wait a minute. Pocket comes in handy. Good evening, Indivisible Kansas City. Isn't it astounding? On the one hand, we've been on this road traveling for a year and walking forever, it seems like. And on the other hand, I definitely remember yesterday evening looking at these crazy results as they were coming in on television. It seems like yesterday. So when that was happening, you know, and we were all scratching our head or staring into space or not understanding what was really happening, what did we do? Well, as concerned citizens, all of us volunteered and reactivated our civic selves and created Indivisible Kansas City. And the idea was to empower other ordinary people, other volunteers, other friends, neighbors, citizens, to empower them to informatively and regularly engage with our elected representatives. And more than that, we had a vision that increased civic engagement could demonstrate the power of progressive grassroots activism. And we realized some of that last night with the electoral results that came back in. And we see that we can actually swing away from authoritarianism and extremism, and that's a good thing. Progressives can be energized to find candidates, and we did that. And they could run in traditionally Republican areas, and one of our founders, Hillary Shields, did just that. And she did really well. And there's one thing we all know, that if we concede tough districts and races by not even fielding a candidate, then in fact, progressives will never take back houses and take back senates and take back our government. We aren't just indivisible, though, no. We're inspired, invested, we're invigorated, we're invincible. Unless we find we're also tired. Tonight's a time to take stock of all we have accomplished and also to celebrate, really. Citizens all over the metro worked together and beat back the repeal of ACA. And Indivisible has prepared the information that we will all need to tease out the complexities of the GOP tax proposals. Whether we're talking to neighbors or calling our members of Congress, we're already showing how these touted reforms will not deliver for our communities, for our students, for our elders, for our health, for our environment, and that's really important work that we're facing right now. So tonight, we've come together to draw strength from each other and from our stories. We've planned to share 4 fantastic stories. You'll see the agenda is on the flip side if you're not looking at it on your sheet. And we've left time for discussion around the tables where you may share your own story of how you came to activism, as well as your hopes for how that activism is going to change the future for our community. We want to send you home with renewed commitment, some reinvigoration, fervor, and some new friends maybe even to draw on as you go down that road. There are many of the core leadership team who are here tonight. I see Rhea, Wade, and Sarah, and Allegra, Rachel, Pafi, Ann. We are missing one significant person, though, our co-founder and president, Emily Riegel. Her husband, Tom, was murdered 3 weeks ago today, brutally slain by gunfire on their stoop. And she wrote to Tom once. They were kind of battling back and forth whose job was more important. And she was talking about the challenge of coming home and trying to describe when he would ask her how her day was, about how a day in palliative care medicine felt like. And she said to him she didn't want to make it seem like her job was more important than his job. But she said it is like this. It's like catching fireflies, thinking they're going to flicker on in the jar on your nightstand for the whole night. And instead, they give up their blinking, and by morning they're scattered among the blades of grass, dried and shrunken. I want to give you the fireflies, Tom, as they are under the oak tree at dusk, not as the shriveled remnants of beauty. And I think, for me, that's also Emily's vision of activism and engagement. We work, all of us, to preserve and to create the best in our culture, the lights in our communities, the blinking firefly beauties that we are, rather than cleave to rosier than reality pasts, or appeal to worst instincts, or give short shrift to all the challenges that we face today. So with that, let's welcome my friend and fellow activist, Rabbi Doug Albert from Congregation Kol Ami.
Thank you. And before I proceed with my own comments, let's take a moment of silence for Tom. His name and memory always be for us. I noticed, actually, my friend Mark Eisman pointed out to me on the program that it says moment of silence, but it doesn't say anything else. So there's something like maybe I shouldn't be talking, and maybe I'm really slow to take a hint. But, you know, it's hard to keep a rabbi quiet, so. I was thinking about a year ago as well, and the last time, a year ago in the position we were in, and couldn't help but thinking we were heading for a time of great darkness, a time of divisiveness, at the time where compassion and empathy were in pretty short supply, a time when our most cherished values were coming under attack. And I think on some level we all felt that way, and we were right on some level. It's been quite a year of challenge. And for me, it was more than a little ironic that it corresponded on the Jewish calendar with the month known as Cheshvan, or as we say in Hebrew, Mar Cheshvan, or Bitter Cheshvan. Why Bitter Cheshvan? Why is this month referred to as the bitter month? Well, for one, other than the weekly Jewish Sabbath, there are no holidays that occur during the month. And also, maybe a more obvious import is that it's leading us into a time of darkness on the calendar. And yet this void on the calendar presents for itself, for us, both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a time to reflect and kind of take a breath. Time to figure out how we reach this point in time, a time to forge a path forward in which we take our own action, a time to bring light into the darkness, and that we can bring that light into the darkness and show that light to and for others. So last January, I had the honor of speaking at the Women's March. And I spoke then of not dwelling on the darkness, but rather to focus on the light of our many communities, of the Black community, Hispanics, our many immigrant communities, both documented and undocumented, Muslims, the LGBTQ community, fast food and other low-wage workers, and yes, women. Focusing on the light in this year or so that's passed, I really haven't changed my mind about that since. Because these communities and the work that went with these communities have been around for a long, long time, and they'll be around for many years to come after the Trump darkness goes away. Of that, I'm absolutely certain. In the past year, Indivisible has done so much to increase the light. It is in the efforts, engagement, and mobilization of people like you in which I see an optimistic path toward a community, country, and world that should be. To see well beyond what is, And while I wish the work was not necessary and pray for the day when it won't be necessary, it is in the work and showing up with the same wonderful, caring, and committed people that gives my own life meaning. There will certainly be more dark days ahead and maybe even darker days than we have yet to experience. But I know we have the power to meet every challenge, to stay in the work for as long as it takes, to not be discouraged into paralysis, and to understand for the first time and then for all time what a great America truly looks like. And so with that, I offer a blessing. It's a blessing I've kind of grown fond of, and it actually comes out of a prayer book from an LGBTQ congregation synagogue out in San Francisco. And it goes like this, first the Hebrew and then the English. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'tzotav v'tzivanu lirdof tzedek. Blessed are you, God, sovereign of the universe, who makes us holy with commandments, puts us in relationship with commandments, and commands us to lirdof tzedek, to pursue justice. Thank you.
So next is Laura.
Hi, there she is.
Do you want the microphone?
No, I'll just talk if that's okay. If you can hear me. Hi, I'm Laura, and I'm so glad it's not a year ago, and I feel like we've come such a long way, and I'm so grateful for Indivisible and all the work that you've done to give us all regular people a platform to speak our truth and our stories. And my story is actually pretty simple. I've been fairly politically active my whole life. I started writing letters when I was in elementary school. I've always voted, but it wasn't until after my son was born. He was born prematurely. He has cerebral palsy and is medically fragile. And then Governor Sam Brownback was reelected in 2014, that I decided it was time to up the ante. So I actually got involved through our PTA, through the Special Education PTA, and I became the legislative chair. I made phone calls, I wrote testimony, I showed up at the Capitol and bugged people, and I had the opportunity to walk to Topeka for full and fair education funding with Heather Owsley, who was just elected to our Contribution School. And then 2016 happened, and I decided it was time to up the ante again. And I basically asked myself two questions. If not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And healthcare is obviously a huge issue for my son and our family. And I knew that our story was important, and I knew it was meaningful. And I knew that I could stand up and speak out for thousands of families that were just like mine. So I basically started telling it to anybody who would listen. I was invited to speak at town halls. I spoke at rallies. I spoke through social media. I went to our legislators' offices and spoke there. And I made the most intimate details of our life public. And that was not easy, and it wasn't comfortable to do. But I knew that it was really important. And I knew that if it wasn't me, then who? And if not now, then when? So this year, I'm dedicating myself to stepping up even more and getting further out of my comfort zone. And we've been playing defense with protests and rallies, and that is so important, and it's critical, and we need to keep doing it. But 2018 is a great year because we finally get to play some offense. I plan on organizing canvassing events for local candidates, phone banking, registering voters. I'm committed to do whatever it takes so that we don't have to continue to protest outside our legislators' offices. And we don't have to try to convince them to keep our children alive. And I'm going to help elect a representative that I can write thank you letters to for protecting our health care, for protecting working families, and that will ensure equality for everyone. And I know that you are in it with me, and that's what gives me hope this year.
Thank you, Laura. And Jerry? There you are.
Hi, I just want to tell you about my very first office visit, and that was at Senator Moran's office back in late January. And I had heard about it through Johnson County Move On, and Joko Move On's advice was speak about something that you have a connection to, write a letter, read a letter in the office, hand over the letter. And so I thought, okay, I'll do that, and I've continued to do it that way just because it helps me organize my thoughts. But back in January, I was thinking, so what do I have a connection to? And my father had passed away the previous year. Before that, he was ill. My mother was the caregiver, and so I got to see the real value of Medicare and how it worked great. And so the whole gist of my letter was, don't take Medicare away from my mom. So the day of I wrote my letter at home. Not the day, but I wrote my letter at home. I practiced my letter at home. The day of, I'm driving there. I have Hamilton cranked up in the back. It's all psyched up. I arrive. There's lots of people, and we cram into Senator Moran's office. And right next to me is a TV reporter and a big TV camera from one of the Lawrence stations. And right now, I hate to tell you, but I really am not a fan of public speaking at all. So, big TV camera. Okay, but I'm determined because prior to this, I've been taking in all this information, stewing about it, grousing about it, and then not doing anything else. So I am determined to read the dang letter. So I get my chance, I read the letter, yay, I've communicated. I can relax a bit, but actually then I could really change my focus to the other people in the room, sharing their stories and their information with their lawmaker, and how great that is, and how every office visit I've been to since then, I'm always learning something from the other people in the room. And so with that, I would like to read a short letter that I was able to slip into the hands of a very fast-moving Kevin Yoder. I don't think he was happy to get it, but he snatched it, and that was good enough for that day. And this is very snazzily titled, "The People I've Met and Why You Should Meet Them Too." Congressman Yoder, when a group walks through the doors of your office, we meet as a group, but we come as individuals. Some of those individuals are novices like me who feel it is time to take some responsibility and get involved. Others have been lending their voice, their knowledge to the democratic process for years. There are veterans, military spouses, independents, Democrats, Republicans, parents, students, doctors, nurses, social workers, engineers, educators, business people, and more. I've met people with incomes in the top 3% of Kansans and those whose lives are affected in a very fundamental way by changes in economic policies, those with secure health care and those whose health care options are precarious, those who bring statistics, and those who bring valuable, often very touching personal experiences. I've met people who speak eloquently, loudly, quietly, and passionately, nervously, boldly, and each of them want what you want to make our community better. So please come talk with them. Please attend a town hall soon. And with that, I just want to say it's an honor to be among you. Thanks.
I can tell you, since I lead those Moran meetings, that Jerry is a valued voice, but all of you have collectively found your voice and valued voice. So we take a couple of minutes at our table to share with people at our table what your own story is and how you came to activism, and we'll just, a few minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. I can tell they're really good conversations, and people are going to be changing cards and giving each other contact information, so the conversation can keep going on. Is Mary Lynn, are you ready? There you are.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Good. So come on up just so that she can film you. And are you good without the mic? We'll see. project.
Hi, you guys. I'm Mary Lynn Hoskin, and I really want to thank you for inviting me here tonight. I am so not worthy. Really, not worthy. I think I'm here for the participation ribbon. Or maybe the most improved Republican award. Either way, I'm really glad to be here. And you might be thinking by now, well, how did you get here? Well, prior to 2016, I was a crazy busy mom, 7 kids, lots of friends. I was a super duper nicest neighbor that you could kind of have, a little wife and friend, and complacent. Very, very complacent. The kind of privileged, optimistic complacency that keeps you from seeing what is happening in front of your face to your party and your country. Prior to 2016, if you had told me that I would not only vote for Hillary Clinton, but I would do so passionately and fervently try to get every single person I know to do the same, I would have said, what the hell kind of clown is the Republican Party going to put up for president? Well, I don't have to tell you the rest of that story. Like everyone here, I went to bed numb and shocked this day last year. All I knew is that I could be complacent no more, that I had to go on record as being on the right side of history.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to do that. I had no idea, and I sort of sucked my thumb in denial for a little bit that the clown and his circus were indeed going to Washington. Then someone invited me to PSN KC on Facebook, and I started seeing posts from something called Indivisible KC, and I decided to go to Washington for the Women's March. I have a husband with a wheelchair, and I turned to him and said, honey, I have to do this, and I'm really going to try not to get killed. Okay? I'm a primary caregiver, but if I do, I'm really sorry and use the insurance money to hire somebody to take care of you, and I really meant that. I grabbed my sister from Oklahoma City, my daughter who's a junior in college, a PSN stranger, of course now a friend, and drove to the Women's March. I flew my other daughter in from the Dominican Republic for her birthday present to be part of this historic event. Then I started, when I got home, I was like, what am I going to do with this? By the way, one of the most beautiful things that ever happened was when I was at the Women's March, and my husband was trying to text me, and it's hard to get that, and he said, honey, I wish you could see what's happening all over the world. It's everything you wanted it to be. It's every reason that you went. I said, all right, I'm going to try to come home alive, but that was the most incredible thing. So when I got home, I said, what am I going to do with this? And I kept getting all these little things on my Facebook. So I started with trepidation calling my NOCs. Like, I can't do that. Who am I? But I called them. And now, by the way, they are on speed dial. I call their offices. So I know when this one's busy, I call that one. I started going to protests. I went to Moran's office and Robert's office voicing my opinions on health care, a very big issue to me and my family. Pretty much every cabinet nominee, the Muslim travel ban, Russia. I donned my father's Air Force jacket and garb to sit in his office in 100-degree weather to make my point about Russia being very important. I have protest kits in my car. If I get tested, I can be somewhere with a sign. I donated fabric to the Delaware people, and I gave a Syrian refugees first American paycheck. I made my first political donation ever in my whole life. My Facebook friend list now includes many elected officials. I volunteer on a campaign to oust Yoder. I've attended a Democratic gala and taken a selfie with Tim Kaine. Not on the local news after the debacle in Charlottesville, demonstrating love. I also got on TV when somebody handed me the microphone when I was protesting DeVos at JCCC.
Yay.
And finally, I got on the Rachel Maddow show. What a year it's been. But I haven't done half of what most of the people in this room have done. And here's my disclaimer. I found out I was on the Rachel Maddow show when Lynn put on Facebook, you're on Rachel Maddow. I said, really? What am I doing? Talking or just standing there? And she said, you're standing there looking very concerned. Because I was standing next to the very eloquent Laura Wilson. I was standing there. But I was participating. This is what democracy looks like. So I will proudly get my participation ribbon in this democracy, and it's never been more important to do that. And we are resisting. And I would like to tell you, don't be afraid to take the first step, which you guys have already done, or to take the next step and take your activism to the next level and completely out of your comfort zone. Hashtag, I'm not a public speaker. Thank you, Indivisible KC, for helping me participate, being great coaches, being good teammates, and giving players like me a chance and time on the field.
I feel like I need to go back to kindergarten and do a big round of applause. So that was so wonderful, and we're gonna hear next about the ACA scrapbook from Jen. I just want to say that there is no such thing as, I'm half as good as, or, haven't done half as much as, or whatever. We all get participation ribbons. And we're going to have another brief session around the tables to talk about what it means to take ourselves out of the comfort zone and go the next step. Because my question for you is, do you have any of those Republican friends we can bring along with?
I'm working on it, and yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the kinds of challenges that we have to keep teasing out. And we're hoping that by having more evenings like this, where we can sort of be tired together and build strength back up again, that we can go to those next step places. So anyway, scrapbooks. Jen?
Actually, I will use it. And then, okay.
Come over here since everybody's in the round. My name is Jen Hayden, and I shared my story with Indivisible to share with Senator McCaskill and Senator Blunt. And speaking outside of, this is not in my comfort zone, public speaking. I do work for Daily Kos, and I rant online a lot, and some of you probably have seen that, but public speaking is not my thing. This is important though, that's why I'm here. Because last May, I went for my first ever mammogram, and 7 weeks later, I had a double mastectomy. I found out that I was one of the 250,000 women in this country who would get breast cancer last year. And nobody was more surprised about that than me. And this is emotional because I'm here for the 250,000 women who don't know that they're going to get that diagnosis this year. And next year, and every year after that, until we find a cure. The Affordable Care Act, inside the Affordable Care Act is the essential health benefits, and those cover mammograms. They were optional before in plans. 1 in 8 women in this country get breast cancer. For that service to be optional is outrageous. It's unacceptable. And so I started coming to Roy Blunt's office every week because I want him to see the face of breast cancer in his community. And that's me, and unfortunately, that's probably going to be a couple more of you, statistically speaking. And if it's caught early in stage 1, stage 0, stage 1, it's almost 100% cure rate right now. It's incredible, the advancements that we've made, but it has to be caught early. And in the early 90s, I watched my aunt die of breast cancer, and I remember the struggles that she went through with her insurance company. She was a self-employed person. She had insurance, and she had to fight every single step of the way for her coverage, and they eventually dropped her. And while she was fighting cancer, she was fighting this greed. And we cannot go back to that. And so I go down to Roy Blunt's office whenever I can. I try to get in front of his people. Claire McCaskill is a recent breast cancer survivor. We're everywhere. And it's not just breast cancer. The Affordable Care Act, the essential health benefits, they cover ambulatory services, emergency visits, maternity. These are services that should not be optional in basic plans, and we cannot go back. And I am so proud of every person in this room, every one of you who called, who show up, who continue to do it, because these are our lives. These are people's lives on the line. You know, this isn't political points. You know, and that's why I'm here, and I am thankful that you are all here too, and I just hope that we just keep going together.
So that's a tough act to follow. And we're gonna just do it by talking briefly. We're 12 till, we're gonna try and do it 4 or so minutes. Just quickly challenge each other around your table. What's your sort of next step out of your comfort zone? And no more public speaking thing. We've got too much sailing on that already, okay? So we're all gonna challenge ourselves on our own public speaking, but so it's gotta be something else other than that, okay? Other than that, significant other and children and maybe even work, and lunch, that extended lunch. So that's my call to action, is to keep standing up, but standing up with friends is a lot more fun. So bring 2 more. One, I'll let you escape. And with that, I'm gonna let us go out on the good words of Dr.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank all of you for being here and your continued work. Sarah, thank you for the invitation. And I've been struggling with what to say to you because I don't know what to say to you. And I thought that I might just speak 3 or 4 minutes from my heart, and then that would be it. The first thing has to do with ACA, and I think it takes me back to May of 2014. ACA was a few years in as law, and the Missouri legislature refused to simply receive the money that would assist the poorest of the poor in having access to some of these basic services that were mentioned before from our sister that spoke, and even for some other folks who would literally need, as she had mentioned, these healthcare services or they would die. And there was a coalition of us, with Missouri Faith Voices and other groups from all across the state, and some 300, 350 of us from Springfield, Sedalia, Columbia, Kansas City, Warrensburg, St. Louis, showed up in Jefferson City with the intent to shut it down. And that we believe that on that day, that at least on that day, that the voices of the voiceless and the vulnerable and the afflicted and the forgotten would be heard no matter what. No matter what. The legislators did not change their mind, but our minds were even more convicted. And we continue to fight and will continue to fight to defend the dignity and honor of all people, believing that health care for all, quality health care for all, is not a privilege for the few, but a right for the all. And so the piece that's most on my heart is that I was in this room, and you'll have to forgive me if I'm crossing lines or talking about things that were not intended to be talked about tonight or what have you, but I've got to speak from my heart as I go. It was in this room about maybe back in May that I met him at a Greater Kansas City Justice Coalition meeting, and was inviting folks to be a part of our petition initiative to raise the minimum wage here in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. In fact, last time I was with you, we were talking about that at All Souls, and we won in August. Again, we're still having to fight the legislature, but we're going to keep on fighting. And I asked her if she would be willing to hear our story about the living wage ordinance, and if she would allow communication to go to you all in hopes that you would consider and support. And clearly many of you did, because the issue back in August won by about 70% positive vote for that. So we do say thank you for that. But it was then that we began to meet on a regular basis, and Sarah was part of those meetings. We're grateful for the outcome. So for the last couple of weeks, my heart has been aching. And I am more sensitive, now more than ever before, that there needs to be a space and place where people of faith and people of goodwill join together and confront the evil of unchecked, unwarranted gun violence that's ravaging this country. We have become barbaric. We have become barbaric. And so, we continue to fight the battle. And I apologize for being so emotional. We continue to fight the battle and advocate for peace. And there is a space and place that some powers that be in this country are not being challenged. And I believe God is doing a new thing. And I do believe that right will still win. And I believe dignity and honor will be increased in this nation. So keep on fighting. And just keep on fighting. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know. What else you going to do? What else you going to do?